How do you reconcile your legacy of being the sensitive, romantic girl at heart, the one that girls everywhere used to relate to, with suddenly becoming a multi-billionaire who is anything but relatable? Taylor Swift's lyrics reveal a lot about this inner battle, and today we're going to do a deep dive on those lyrics. Since she was just 16, Taylor Swift has been releasing songs that deeply resonate with and have changed the lives of young girls everywhere. From such a young age, she's had the ability to articulately sum up in just a few lyrics the acutely female experiences of love, longing, and hope upon the backdrop of music that elevates the soul. Even today, when I listen to her older music, I'm whisked away on a wave of nostalgia to my own feelings of first falling in love, the shattering devastation of heartbreak, the optimism of hope in a brand new relationship, and so much more. And this is what good music does. It unites us all in our shared human experiences. As a young girl of just 14, when I first listened to Taylor Swift, it was so cool hearing my experiences of girlhood being translated into music. Taylor Swift felt like a big sister or a friend, and girls today can listen to that very same music from all those years ago and experience the comfort of knowing that the great and successful Taylor Swift was once a young, awkward girl just like them. But the young girls who first sang along to her country hit Tim McGraw back in 2006 have now grown into women, and Taylor Swift's music has grown along with them. In fact, we women have almost been able to walk closely alongside Taylor Swift as she has progressed through her own journey to adulthood, largely because of how much she chooses to share with us about her private life. But what we've all found is that adulthood feels different from what we were promised. There's less stability, we can't afford the houses or picket fences or families that we were once promised, and there certainly is not a Prince Charming waiting for us. And as we women attempt to navigate this adult experience in a world that, thanks to social media, the internet and AI, looks vastly different from the experience of most adult generations before us, we have continued to look to our role models for guidance. Many women continue to turn to Taylor Swift and her music with the trust of a doting fan who has felt validated and understood by her lyrics for so long, looking for the next answer. Today's adults are in need more than ever of solid role models and trustworthy voices that can help guide them through the shock of adulthood amidst an ever-growing loneliness epidemic, shifting gender roles, and a fraught dating culture. And young girls today are in as much need as they always have been for an older woman who can show them what they should aspire to be. And whereas Taylor Swift's music used to be a beacon of hope and a source of catharsis for young women everywhere, music that pointed them towards love, wonder, and encouragement, when I take a look at her lyrics today, I'm not so sure anymore. My name is Kristen. I've been a fan of Taylor Swift's music for years, and these days I'm trying to wrestle with what it means to still currently enjoy the music of a young, relatable Swift, whilst making peace with her transformation into someone much less relatable, whose impact and arguably motives have shifted so dramatically. I'd love to start with some objective facts that prove that Taylor Swift's lyrics have profoundly impacted people in the past, but I think you'd have to scroll a bunch of Tumblr blogs and Reddit threads to prove this. We do know from the numbers that her music is hugely successful, but you could also argue that this is because she is a marketing genius, or that at this point she has made everyone so invested in her personal life that it is that curiosity that drives people to listen to her music rather than the music itself. We see this in the recent release of her album The Life of a Showgirl, which topped charts and broke records despite its mixed reviews, but I'll go into those later. For now, I'll say that I think The Life of a Showgirl serves as a perfect example for how Taylor Swift has become a cultural trend and a hot topic, ensured, by the way, through her almost definitely deliberate, highly publicized romance with Travis Kelce that makes people flood to her album just to be part of the cultural discourse around it, rather than a songwriter whose new albums people simply have to tune into because it's going to be that good. Beyond Swifties, people are mostly tuning in to Taylor Swift's music out of curiosity or the desire to conform to the latest trend. Even people who haven't liked her music in the past tune in because they know that's what everyone's going to be talking about at work tomorrow. Or heck, maybe they just want to use her music to make viral TikTok trends. Regardless, Taylor Swift's significance and what her music means for the culture and for the individual human has changed significantly. Unfortunately, she has so many associations attached to her name now that people likely can't engage with her music purely. They will necessarily bring their biases into the listening experience. But she's not the only artist who has been around as long as she has, and yet her name is arguably the most polarizing of any other pop stars at the moment. The pendulum swing goes back and forth from Taylor positivity to Taylor negativity with every new album, with every new way that she chooses to announce music, with every new social media post, and with every sporting event that she attends. And yet, if we look beyond the obvious marketing choices and public activities, there is something deeper and I believe more obvious that has shaped the public perception of Taylor Swift. In short, it's her lyrics. In this video, I'm going to conduct a deep dive analysis into Taylor Swift's lyrics throughout her entire discography, ultimately arguing that her artfully crafted lyrics that once pointed us towards optimism, hope, and love have begun to take on something a little more sinister. And I say that as a fan who has grown up with her music. And this video is going to be long because I want to make sure that I'm giving a fair and nuanced analysis of the complexity of Taylor Swift's work and her talent as a songwriter. I'm going to paint a picture of how some of Taylor Swift's specific lyrics have moved me and many other women before pivoting into where I think her lyrics started to arguably let women down. And yes, I am going to be changing my outfits to correspond with each album. Tim McGraw feels important to include because it was her first ever released song from her first ever released album, self-titled or often referred to as debut. In these lyrics, as well as in her vocal tone and the slow, calming melody of the song, you can hear her knowledge of the profound impact that love can have. Even at just 16 years old, she was a young girl aware of the bittersweet reality that her relationship was probably going to end, and yet she still idealized the forever impact that their love was going to have on each other. At the same time, she portrays the delicate ego of a 16-year-old girl, so fragile that she is riddled with self-doubt. She captures all of this in the very first lines of the song. He said the way my blue eyes shined, put those Georgia stars to shame that night. I said, that's a lie. In the chorus, she articulates the longing that every young girl has to be remembered for the simple things, for the simple shared moments, in a way that is so simple. When you think of happiness, I hope you think that little black dress. Think of my head on your chest and my old faded blue jeans. Almost every woman, I'm sure, can relate to the feeling of nostalgia that she captures in this song, can relate to looking back on a relationship that's over and wondering whether the person still thinks of you. This song captures the naive longing and optimism of a 16-year-old love through the eyes of a girl who has not yet experienced the darkness of the world. Today, I can listen to that song and be transported back to that feeling of youth, optimism, and hope after experiencing your first love. These are inherently good experiences that are deeply human and character forming. We don't have time to go into them, but there are so many other examples of this on her first self-titled album. Taylor's next album, Fearless, was released in 2008 and contains the songs Love Story and You Belong With Me, which I'm not going to go into because you likely already know about them, but overall both are great examples of the very common teenage desire for fairy tale love, and again that young, whimsical, innocent optimism that comes with that young love. They are outrageously popular songs, even today, because they do such an excellent job of this. Another one of my favourites from the album is hands down the title track, Fearless. This song still has the ability to make me belt its lyrics down the highway on full volume when I'm alone in my car, and its message is summarized in its title. We all remember one of the crucial, beautiful, and unrepeatable aspects of young love. It truly is fearless. When you're young, you haven't yet experienced the grueling, crushing pain of heartbreak, the fresh wounds over healing scars, the monotony of the dating world, and the pain of having to put up walls just to protect yourself from future pain. No, you love full-hearted, effortlessly, and fearlessly, because your body has not yet learned that it could end differently from the happily ever after that you are projecting in your heart and your head. It's beautiful, free love that truly soars. The highs are perfectly high because you haven't learned to second guess yet. It's nerve-wracking and awkward, but only because it's new and exciting. The boy in the driver's seat driving you around on a date is the epitome of cool and mysterious because you haven't yet learned about the flaws of human beings and the patterns in male behavior. It's just exhilarating. She sings, We're driving down the road. I wonder if you know, I'm trying so hard not to get caught up now, but you're just so cool. Run your hands through your hair, absent-mindedly making me want you. We all know this feeling of being speechless when you've got a crush on someone, falling for them just because they exist, and trying to be cool yourself because you don't want to embarrass yourself. And that tug in your brain reminding you to be discerning, but your feelings betray you because it's just so exciting. And then the chorus comes and she sings, and I don't know how it gets better than this. You take my hand and drag me head first fearless. And I don't know why, but with you I'd dance in a storm in my best dress. Fearless. Probably unbeknownst to Taylor at the time, she was articulating young love perfectly. The complete, immediate trust, the exhilarating whirlwind of it, and the fact that you don't know why or how any of this is happening. You can't make sense of this new feeling, but it's so exciting, and for some reason, the idea of dancing in the rain in your best dress is romantic. And if you were to interview any woman on the street, I would be willing to bet that at least 90% of them relate to this feeling. And that's my point. Taylor Swift's lyrics have captured such universal feelings in such short and simple sentences. And that is the gift of a good lyricist and songwriter. There is no way I can do justice to Taylor Swift's third album, Speak Now, and its impact on me in a single video. For now, I'll settle for selecting lyrics from some of the most powerful and I believe important songs on this album. Sparks Fly expands on the human experience of falling head over heels in such an intense way that you don't know how to control the feelings. If you listen to it, you'll see that Taylor Swift manages to sum up exactly what people mean when they say that they felt a spark with someone. Give me something that will haunt me when you're not around, she writes, fully acknowledging the pull that powerful attraction has, the kind of pull that renders you unable to think of anything else in the days and weeks that follow. She sings, my mind forgets to remind me you're a bad idea. At 20 years old, she's at the peak of this battle between what her emotions tell her that she wants and what her head knows is right. Another universal experience that she has summarized perfectly in this song. Enchanted, one of her most universally loved songs, captures the wonder of meeting a stranger at a party and feeling like you've fallen for them immediately. A feeling that, again, we can all relate to in one way or another. Who hasn't been enchanted by the illusion of someone new, specifically when you have such little information about them that you turn them into an idea of sorts? The music and lyrics truly sweep the listener into a magical world of mystery and possibility. This night is sparkling. Don't you let it go. I'm wonderstruck, blushing all the way home. I'll spend forever wondering if you knew I was enchanted to meet you. This chorus powerfully encapsulates, largely through hyperbole and metaphor, how a first impression of someone you're attracted to can feel like it's changed your life. We all know the thrill of talking to a new person all night and wondering if it's going to go further. Taylor Swift paints this picture for us so that we can relive it when we listen to this song. And it's not just the lyrics. Enchanted as a song has melody, lyrics, and instrumentalism working together to truly capture lightning in a bottle. Lightning that most people argue couldn't even be recaptured in the Taylor's version of this song. And then of course I have to mention Dear John, Taylor's ode to heartbreak after her famous breakup with John Mayer, in which she wrote the crushing lines, Dear John, I see it all now that you're gone. Don't you think I was too young to be messed with? The girl in the dress cried the whole way home. I should have known. These lyrics are all the more poignant when you realize that John Mayer was 32 at the time of dating Taylor, while she was just 19. Taylor does a great job of painting her objective innocence alongside Mayer's alleged callousness with dating. Through her artful writing, in which she reveals just enough without over-explaining, and in her rhetorical questioning here, Swift leaves the listener with the uncomfortable question of what happens when there is such a clear age and power imbalance in a relationship, as well as confronting our own biases of who was to blame. She actually provides further insight into this saga later in one of her vault tracks for the Midnight's album called Would've, Could've, Should've, which is largely believed to be about John Mayer. The song was released 12 years after Speak Now and delivered to us the chilling lyric, Give me back my girlhood, it was mine first. In this revealing accusation of John Mayer, Taylor acknowledges a pivotal moment where her trust disappeared, and I'll go into that a little bit more later on. But I thought it was worth touching on here to highlight the immense insight that Taylor's lyrics have given us into her grueling growth process. Being able to walk with someone as they learn hard lessons of love and loss, and to see them process those lessons in hindsight is fascinating. The lyrics lyrics to Dear John are saddening whilst also being scathing and blunt. In real time, we saw Taylor learn some of her first hard lessons about love, that things don't always go your way, that people let you down, and that you have to be discerning about who you give your trust to. Dear John's lyrics allude to the experiences of being gaslit by your partner, walking on eggshells, learning helplessness, and so much more. And of course, I have to mention the following lyrics because in them we start to see Taylor Swift's backbone and the particular fierceness that's going to shape a lot of her future songwriting. You are an expert at sorry, at keeping lines blurry, never impressed by me acing your tests. All the girls that you've run dry have tired, lifeless eyes because you've burnt them out. But I took your matches before fire could catch me, so don't look now. I'm shining like fireworks over your sad, empty town. Scathing. Speaking of scathing, we can't talk about scathing without mentioning Better Than Revenge, one of Taylor's most poorly received songs, especially in hindsight. She even changed some of the lyrics when she recorded her Taylor's version of this song, but I'm going to go into that a little bit later. There's no other way to say it. This song was catty and mean. In it, she basically shames the woman for whom her ex-boyfriend dumped her, and she's not kind as she does it. At the same time, though I do not condone speaking like this about anyone, Better Than Revenge still did show a very human emotion and experience, that feeling of anger and jealousy towards someone who hurt us or to the perceived other woman. And Taylor was 20, so as far as I'm concerned, she can be forgiven for writing this song, as most of us would have written or thought equally scathing things about people who hurt us at that age. That age was messy, and Taylor was real for writing about it. How do we sort through such challenging feelings at such a fragile age? Taylor forces us to ask ourselves. Still though, not a great example for young girls, and this song unfortunately would have likely been used to justify a lot of young girls blaming and shaming behaviour towards other girls, which is serious. And ultimately, therefore, I do think that condoning this mentality was a poor use of her platform, but more on that later, as this is a sign of what's to come. There were also incredibly beautiful tracks on this album that detail new human experiences that Taylor was learning about. This was the first time that Taylor ever promoted the idea of apologizing to someone she'd hurt, which she does to an ex-boyfriend in Back to December. She also wrote Never Grow Up, a song about childhood that is so beautifully written that it brings me to tears now that I'm a mum. She writes both of these songs in a raw, honest way that I feel does justice to their respective human experiences. She also wrote another pretty scathing song called Mean, in which she navigates just some of the rising public criticism that she was beginning to receive at the time. In this song, we also begin to see that bite from Taylor Swift in a way that foreshadows her future work. But you could ultimately argue in a reading of these lyrics that she's standing up for herself and choosing the high road rather than getting bogged down. She asked multiple times, why you gotta be so mean? Which is a valid and important question to ask. I am all for holding people accountable, especially when they're bullying others for seemingly no reason. I do have to point out, however, the irony of her writing these lyrics. I bet you got pushed around, somebody made you cold, but the cycle ends right now because you can't lead me down that road. As we're going to see soon, no one is in fact immune from being led down that road, even Taylor Swift. Overall, Speak Now is a beautifully messy album wherein Taylor is starting to learn of the pains of love. She's grappling with the pulls and paradoxes of blooming adulthood, and she's discovering the kind of person that she's going to be. It is a wonderfully human album with honesty, optimism, and though it leads us down the guarded path occasionally, its overall message is still hope, love, don't break people's hearts, don't be mean, and apologize to people you've hurt, which are good messages. With Taylor's fourth album, Red, we enter her ascent into the pop world and a rise in mainstream popularity. From this point onward, for multiple years, she was considered a talented songwriter and lyricist. Though even with her rising success, her lyrics in this album, generally speaking, in my opinion, still remain grounded and steered towards message of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of love, which is huge given that the whole centerpiece of this album was Taylor's biggest heartbreak to date, and arguably one of her biggest heartbreaks still, her breakup with actor Jake Gyllenhaal. State of Grace is an incredibly powerful opener to the album. With the brand new heartbreak that she's brought onto the record, Taylor has some new life lessons in tow. She writes, "So you were never a saint, and I've loved in shades of wrong. We learn to live with the pain, mosaic broken hearts. But this love is brave and wild." She was learning huge lessons in real time with us and coaching us through them. We girls who had made mistakes in our relationships felt understanding and catharsis in listening listening to these lyrics. Lyrics that articulated the inevitability of slipping up in the journey to finding love and becoming a good human. And I'm sure it took bravery and a devotion to honest songwriting to bring these lyrics to life. She continues in some of my favourite lyrics, "This is a state of grace, this is the worthwhile fight. Love is a ruthless game unless you play it good and right. These are the hands of fate, you're my Achilles heel. This is the golden age of something good and right and real." To us girls who had already been broken and battered by love, Taylor was telling us to persevere because a good love is worth fighting for. And the music behind these lyrics is powerful. It's strong and upbeat, and it builds in such a way that mirrors the rise in hope that we girls felt when listening to it. To this day, State of Grace is still one of my favourite Taylor Swift songs. I still even listen to it on my down days and it picks me up every time. The song 22 is a classic for a reason. I don't know another song that better summarises the romantic experience of being a young 20-something-year-old, old enough to think you know everything about life, but young enough to not have realised that you actually know nothing. It feels like a perfect night to dress up like hipsters and make fun of our exes. It feels like a perfect night for breakfast at midnight to fall in love with strangers. Gone are the days of being so young that we have the energy to do any of these things, and gone is the blind trust that we gave to strangers enough to fall in love with them immediately. But I'm sure we very much remember and sometimes miss the feeling of having that freedom, of having that blank canvas every night. And this song perfectly sums it up for us so that we could both sing it at 3 a.m. at the local house party then and travel back to that feeling now. She sings, "We're happy, free, confused and lonely at the same time. It's miserable and magical. Tonight's the night when we forget about the deadlines." I mean, nothing's changed really. We are still happy, free, confused and lonely. But it's certainly no longer magical, because when we were 22, our heads were full of dreams and possibilities, whereas now we've pretty much chosen and settled into our main trajectory in life, and if not, we no longer have the energy to do this stuff anyway. Yes, we still dream, hopefully, but after your late 20s, you've experienced too much life to be able to dream with the same reckless abandon as Taylor paints in this picture. We all now have too many responsibilities, too many fears, mortgages tethering us down, young family life keeping us on autopilot because of sleep deprivation, jobs burning us out. The experience of being in our early 20s, that brief period of freedom with naivety, is something we can never get back. She's once again captured that universal human feeling, felt just as much by the next generation experiencing it today as it was by us experiencing it 10 years ago, and how awesome to have captured for us in this song. It feels like one of those nights we ditch the whole scene and end up dreaming instead of sleeping. Oh, how we wish we could afford to stay up all night dreaming like we used to. And maybe one day we will again. But 22 at least helps us to remember the feeling. I could go on about Red. There is honestly so much in there. I haven't even touched on All Too Well, which is truly an artful time capsule for heartbreak. And I think I could make a 20-minute video on those lyrics alone. But I think I've made it clear that Taylor Swift continues to acutely capture human experiences by just examining these few songs, and how this time in this album the particular human experiences that she was singing about were finding your identity in established adulthood, learning lessons about heartache, putting certain walls up for protection but simultaneously still being soft, open and vulnerable. Again, all positive life lessons. Following Red, we entered the era of the beloved 1989, in which Taylor well and truly hit her stride when it came to songwriting. There is not a single bad or even mediocre song on this album. This album was so acclaimed by critics and the public, in fact, that it marked an even bigger rise in Taylor Swift's popularity, and for good reason. The album's lyrics were thoughtful, poetic, and no less relatable than previous albums. Welcome to New York introduces us to the album with another universal human experience, that of having left the nest, moving away from our hometown, and now facing a brand new start in a new city, a new job, or a new life. Walking through the crowd, the village is aglow, kaleidoscope of loud heartbeats undercoats. Here we have more lyrics about the vibrant, explosive feeling of new and endless possibilities that one experiences in their 20s, when they've not tied themselves down to anything, and there is fluidity and movement in every single day, hidden in the picture of individuals walking down the streets in their winter coats. Out of the Woods captures one of my favorite pictures of a particularly nuanced feeling that happens in certain romantic relationships, where the two of you are caught in a moment of tense unknowing of whether you have a future or not, but it's stretched out for longer than it should be, and the stakes get higher with every moment of investment point, leading to prolonged stress and fear because it could plummet and crash at any moment. See how long it took me to explain that specific feeling? Well, Taylor articulates it beautifully in this song in relation to her turbulent relationship with Harry Styles. She writes, "Your necklace hanging from my neck the night we couldn't quite forget, when we decided to move the furniture so we could dance, like we stood a chance, 2 paper airplanes flying, and I remember thinking, are we out of the woods yet?" Here is a glimpse of the whimsy and romance of a new fling, made stressful by external pressures that, because of how new the relationship is, threaten to break the couple apart. The couple, aware of this risk, choose to take the chance of being together anyway, because what they have is beautiful and hard to find. But either one of them could choose to leave at any moment. They're flying high as airplanes, yes, but the airplanes are made of paper. In this metaphor, Taylor articulates that this couple has got one shot, and even a slight gust of wind could knock them off track. These lyrics summarize the crux of what makes a new relationship exhilarating, knowing of the possibility that the other person could completely break you, while at the same time brazenly trusting them not to. It's the plot of so many movies because once again it is so universally relatable. I Wish You Would documents the feeling of regret after you've pushed someone away, while all you had to do was stay highlights the anger felt when an ex wants to come back to you, but it's too late because they've already hurt you. She writes, "Now you say you want it back, now that it's just too late. Well, could have been easy, all you had to do was stay." It's so simple and so true to the experience of so many heartbroken dumpees who have gone on to pick themselves up after heartbreak only to have their ex come crawling back. Both songs are incredibly well written and very, very catchy. Next is Clean, a song that reflects in retrospect on the healing process after heartbreak. This complex idea is conveyed in the metaphor of Taylor being trapped in a room with images of her ex and butterflies that have turned to dust, and so she punches a hole in the roof and welcomes in the rain, which gradually washes her clean. "The rain came pouring down. When I was drowning, that's when I could finally breathe. And by morning, gone was any trace of you. I think I am finally clean." I can speak from experience when I say that this is an immensely cathartic and healing song to sing a good few months after heartbreak. At this point, Taylor has wisened up through her many breakups, and she still comes to us with songwriting that uplifts us as listeners and assures us that we can still emerge resilient from the pain. She even acknowledges that healing isn't linear, a profound insight at just 24 years old. In the lyric, 10 months sober, I must admit, just because you're clean don't mean you don't miss it." Double negative aside, lyrics like this acknowledge the rough, unclear journey of healing from heartache, which was helpful for women who at that point hadn't experienced enough of it to know how to manage it. Listening to this song was validating and comforting for women such as myself who just wanted to know they weren't alone and that there was hope. And of course, we can't talk about 1989 without giving Blank Space her flowers. Blank Space truly has some of the most clever and self-aware lyrics in Taylor Swift's discography. She took the public scrutiny of her dating life at the time and flipped the narrative, taking ownership of it and simultaneously poking fun at herself in lyrics such as, "You look like my next mistake. Love's a game. Wanna play? I'm dying to see how this one ends. Find out what you want. Be that girl for a month. Darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream." And of course, the chorus, "So it's gonna be forever or it's gonna go down in flames. You can tell me when it's over if the high was worth the pain. Got a long list of ex-lovers, they'll tell you I'm insane. Cause you know I love the players and you love the game. Cause we're young and we're reckless. We'll take this way too far. It'll leave you breathless or with a nasty scar. Got a long list of ex-lovers, they'll tell you I'm insane. But I've got a blank space and I'll write your name." These lyrics are a lot more sarcastic and bitey than those on her earlier albums, but if you look closely, she's singing about the same experiences, the highs and lows of passionate love, the anticipation and uncertainty of new relationships, and the pain of heartache. Only now, it's happened enough that the innocence and some of the optimism is gone. She's still explaining her human experience, but through an understandably jaded lens, which is no less interesting nor real to watch. In fact, most of us, now having reached our mid-20s at the time of this release, could relate to the feeling beginning of new and explosive relationships, as well as the inevitable crash and burn of those that go from 0 to 100 too fast, Taylor was still acknowledging and speaking to us fans in a way that resonated deeply. But these lyrics were so artfully written that they didn't just resonate with her loyal audience, they also had a wit that silenced many of her critics. She appeared on the surface to be making fun of herself, but really these lyrics called the listener to a higher accountability. Which of their own attitudes towards dating were they projecting onto Taylor, and do they now realize how silly they looked, claiming to know what her love life and motives were like behind the curtain? Was it fair or unfair of them to project such a black and white judgmental view of dating onto her? So through this song, Taylor took back some of her power to control the narrative. And this was not the last time she did it. In fact, part of Taylor Swift's marketing prowess is that she knows how to rebrand herself and how to use criticism to her advantage. Which brings us to Reputation. Now, I will be the last person to claim that I understand what it must be like to go through a giant cancellation where the whole world turns against you based on evidence of a supposed crime that you didn't commit. This is something Taylor Swift actually did go through in 2016 at the tender age of 26. I cannot even begin to imagine what this must have been like, but we know that it was deeply soul-shattering and traumatizing for Taylor Swift because she still sings about it even to this day. With that said, understandable as the reason may be, this was, in my opinion, the moment where the tone started to noticeably shift in her writing, and it went through a few different shifts thereafter. Reputation saw Taylor pull the same genius tactic of flipping the narrative on the hate that she'd gotten during her cancellation. Famously, when a lot of the world had turned on her, people everywhere had at the time flooded her Instagram comments with snake emojis, prompting her to turn her comments off across her entire Instagram page, and they have not been turned back on since, which is a fitting metaphor, by the way, for how her relationship with her music and her fans changed forever on that day. But after a year of relative silence from Taylor Swift, she made one of the most famous comebacks in pop music history with her first single from the album Reputation, Look What You Made Me Do. The entire song was, similarly to Blank Space, a satirical mockery of her image in the public eye, made even more clear by its video clip. In an incredibly clever move, Taylor took ownership of the snake image by centering her entire Reputation branding around it. But rather than accepting the narrative that she was a snake by nature, Taylor essentially posited that she had been forced to become the snake because of the quote, role you made me play. And so Reputation's dark, undercover, secret, almost grimy vibe was born. And the motif of the snake was woven throughout the album cycle. To this day, people still associate the image of the snake with Taylor Swift. What I bet Taylor Swift didn't count on, however, was that in trying to play the role of the snake, she might actually become the snake. In Reputation, we start to see more confessional writing from a woman who has essentially done bad things and wants to put them out into the open. I imagine that in confessing such things, Taylor felt like she got to own the narrative around them rather than being subject to her dirty laundry coming out in the media. In Reputation, we see that for the first time, Taylor Swift makes secrecy, sin, and manipulation recurrent through lines throughout the album. We hear numerous lyrics about hidden secrets and beginning love in dark, hidden places. In Ready For It, she sings, Island breeze and lights down low, no one has to know. In Don't Blame Me, she sings, something happened for the first time in the darkest little paradise. In Delicate, she sings, phone lights up, my nightstand in the black, come here, you can meet me in the back. In Dancing With Our Hands Tied, she sings, I loved you in secret. In Dress, she sings, our secret moments in a crowded room, they got no idea about me and you. This secrecy motif is the antithesis of the brazen, full-hearted honesty with which Taylor seemingly wrote a lot of her previous music. And who can blame her? She's hitting a crucial identity-defining point of adulthood, all the while going through the most intense and public scrutiny that she ever had. In Reputation, we also find the recurrent motif of a long-term grudge that Taylor seems to be holding. And I want to stress that this is very understandable given that she was less than 2 years out from having been framed for something that she didn't exactly do. But the theme of holding onto grudges is very obvious on this record. In Ready For It, she sings, I keep him forever like a vendetta. In Endgame, she sings, I bury hatchets, but I keep maps of where I put them. In Look What You Made Me Do, she sings, I've got a list of names and yours is in red underlined. Maybe I got mine, but you'll all get yours. And all I think about is karma. So at this point, we're witnessing the young Taylor who once sung about innocent love, reconciliation, and optimistic hope for the future, essentially dying in her own words and being born again as a new woman who seems to be hell-bent on revenge, receipts, and justice. I'm sorry, she says, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Oh, because she's dead. This line is far more prophetic than we realize. And then there's the motif of crime. Knew he was a killer first time I saw him, knew I was a robber first time he saw me, stealing hearts and running off and never saying sorry. But if I'm a thief, then he can join the heist and we'll move to an island and he can be my jailer. In Getaway Car, she sings, riding in a getaway car, there were sirens in the beat of your heart. It was the great escape, the prison break. There's also a theme of drugs. In Endgame, she sings, you so dope, don't overdose. In Don't Blame Me, she sings, my drug is my baby, I'll be using for the rest of my life. I get so high every time you're loving me, trip of my life. This new theme of mischief, of committing crimes, of prison and illegal activity is not something we've seen on this level before in Taylor's discography. It's almost as if she is again trying to take her power back by owning the fact that she has done something wrong. Yes, you caught me out. I did a bad thing. Let me own it and turn it into my brand. But it's not just crime and grudges. It seems at certain points in Taylor's lyrics that she is almost reveling in her crimes or bad behavior. In I Did Something Bad, she sings, they say I did something bad, then why does it feel so good? In Don't Blame Me, she sings, and baby for you, I would fall from grace just to touch your face. I believe she's actually touching on the compelling force of love. It can bend or break you. It can turn you bad or good. But which option are you going to choose, Taylor? Perhaps that will become clearer as we travel through her following albums. But before we go there is one last thing I want to touch on from Reputation. Whereas in her prior discography, Taylor seemed to advocate for bold, fearless, unapologetic love, she now sings of love games, hidden motives, and manipulation. In I Did Something Bad, she sings, I never trust a narcissist, but they love me, so I play them like a violin, and I make it look easy, because for every lie I tell them, they tell me 3. In Don't Blame Me, she sings, I've been breaking hearts a long time and toying with them older guys, just playthings for me to use. In Getaway Car, she sings, it's no surprise I turned you in, cause us traitors never win. And in Ready For It, she overtly sings, baby, let the games begin, let the games begin. Why is love suddenly a game to her when she has always sung about love being true? It is clear in this album that Taylor is going through a huge identity shift, not just in her brand, but within herself. On Reputation, she tackles the paradox of being both innocent of the crime that the world has blamed her for, while simultaneously admitting to numerous crimes in relationships. One moment she sings about toying with men as if they're playthings, and the next moment she claims that she is the victim. In I Did Something Bad, she sings, they're burning all the witches even if you aren't one. They got their pitchforks and proof, their receipts and reasons. In Endgame, she seems to shirk blame in the lyric, I swear I don't love the drama, it loves me. Now, is she making an ironic satirical comment here, or is she genuinely oblivious to the fact that at this point she really does seem to love the drama? Correct me if I'm wrong. And in Don't Blame Me, she sings, don't blame me, love made me crazy. Once again here, it seems as if she's shirking responsibility for her actions, as if all is fair in love and war. If all is fair, then why does she sing about the wrongdoings of her partners as if they are egregious crimes, but the next minute blames love for making her crazy when it comes to her own crimes? If you blame your partners for hurting you, surely you should also be blamed for hurting them, no? And if you're not to blame for love making you crazy, then surely they aren't either? To be clear, I'm not saying that anyone should get away with any type of hurt in relationships. I actually believe that all isn't fair in love and war. I believe that true love is actually the epitome of virtue. It takes care of the other and deeply desires flourishing for them. Therefore, in my eyes, games, manipulation, dishonesty, and hurt are never justified. I am merely questioning the integrity of Taylor's message here. If we hold men to a certain standard, we should hold women to that standard as well. In fact, get rid of the battle of the sexes completely. If we hold one person to a certain standard, we should hold the other person to this standard as well. True love shouldn't make you crazy. Virtuous love is the opposite of volatile and impulsive. It's measured, consistent, and disciplined. But if we look a little closer in Reputation, we can see between the lines the deep hurt that Taylor actually feels as a result of the hurt that she has experienced in her dating life. She has been truly wounded, and that innocent, naive, trusting love is well and truly gone. To lunch, it might be back. In I Did Something Bad, she sings of her lost trust. I never trust a playboy, but they love me, so I fly them all around the world and I let them think they saved me. They never see it coming, what I do next. This is how the world works. You gotta leave before you get left. It's a really sad chapter in Taylor's love story, in my opinion. Her beautifully wholehearted lyrics about love where she believed in magic and fairy tales are now a thing of the past, seemingly, and like all pain, her wounds seem to have stripped her of the ability to love brazenly. She touches on this exact thing many times in Reputation and in her subsequent albums. Whereas in earlier albums she loved with no filter, we gradually see her intuition getting refined as she grows older. To give some examples, in Dancing with Our Hands Tied, she sings, "You said there was nothing in the world that could stop it. I had a bad feeling. I loved you in spite of deep fears that the world would divide us." In Labyrinth, she sings, "You know how scared I am of elevators. Never trust it if it rises fast. It can't last." In Would've, Could've, Should've, she writes, "If you'd never touched me, I would have gone along with the righteous. Would've, could've, should've. If I'd only played it safe, I would have stayed on my knees, and I damn sure never would have danced with the devil at 19. And the God's honest truth is that the pain was heaven, and now that I'm grown, I'm scared of ghosts. Memories feel like weapons, and now that I know, I wish you'd left me wondering." The latter is a particularly poignant example of how each hurt in one's life sees them build thicker and higher walls around their heart. Would've, Could've, Should've brought a particularly bitter catharsis for we women who had grown along with and got hurt along with Taylor in her journey to find love. But there was hope for her yet, because as we know, she would go on to be able to love fully in numerous future relationships. But before we move on to Lover, a further note on the pivotal chapter of Taylor's music that was Reputation. If you think of the most hurtful, traumatic chapter of your life, you won't have to extend your mind too far to be able to understand this album, written by a clearly traumatized young woman. This album serves as a snapshot of Taylor's pain immediately after the fact of her cancellation, in real time. So even though there are messy and dark notes, it is actually no less human than her previous albums. To be able to clearly admit your wrongdoing so publicly is actually quite self-aware and brave. So as far as I'm concerned, Reputation, though arguably her messiest album, is one of her most real. Do I think that she was trying to own the narrative so much, possibly to the point of putting up walls as coping strategies and therefore not really acknowledging how deeply hurt she actually was? Yes. If we're being honest, a truly real album would likely have involved a lot more tears, confusion and vulnerability, asking lots of whys, possibly taking accountability for her wrongdoings rather than saying, yeah, I did wrong, so what? But I don't think her avoidance here was intentional. I think that her mind and her nervous system actively fought against the threats that were coming at her to the point where she needed to release this album for the sake of her image. She likely didn't have time to properly process because she believed she had to move quickly. So Reputation is, in one sense, a fascinating study into human psychology after trauma or when under threat or danger. At the same time, yes, this album did not have some of the greatest messaging. One-time listeners risk taking away the impression that Taylor is petty, vindictive, or, dare I say it, a snake who justifies lies and manipulation in relationships. And we can't expect all listeners to dive in with a nuanced ear. Most people are going to be casual listeners, not devout fans. That being said, I do feel that the dark themes in Reputation are understandable when you zoom out and look at the context, though I am not justifying the messaging. Now, when we go through trauma in life, depending how we navigate it, we can either emerge from it resilient or bitter and jaded. And though Taylor Swift has proven to be resilient in many ways, the jaded side of her is absolutely present in her subsequent albums, which is ultimately the foundation of this entire video. We've now closely examined the album that represents the turning point in her life, aptly titled Reputation, but let's take a closer look at the latter half of her discography. The album that followed Reputation, called Lover, is an album that I'm only going to quickly discuss. On the surface, it looked like Taylor was emerging from her pain as a soft butterfly, and she tried very hard to brand the album in this way. The pastel colours, the butterfly motifs, the bright colours during its promotion. She was doing events, paparazzi walks, and at this point she had been vindicated in regards to the prior drama. So this album was seemingly saying, I've healed, it's all good, I trust you guys again, and I love my life. What we know now in hindsight is that a lot of that was fabricated in order to portray a certain narrative, rather than being an authentic representation of the truth. Taylor pretty much admitted this herself when she created a playlist called Denial in 2024, in which she included the title track of this album, Lover. I don't blame Taylor for being obsessed with branding at this point, given everything, but it was certainly a departure from the raw, diaristic writing that her fans had loved about her since day one. The album was playful, fun, and colourful, sure, but that's not what drew people into Taylor Swift's craft in the first place. A lot of people felt that this album was a bit shallow and that it lacked that layer of heart and substance that we were used to from Taylor. Still, I found that there were glimpses of honesty and lyrics that still deeply resonated with me at the time. She was singing about how happy she was in Lover, Paper Rings, London Boy, Me, and so many others. But then there were darker moments where her insecurities were peeking out, and she, potentially accidentally, revealed that she was actually more broken than she wanted us to believe she was. Lyrical highlights for me in this category are The Archer, Cruel Summer, and Soon You'll Get Better. In these songs, I once again witnessed the gift that Taylor Swift has for succinctly summing up uniquely human experiences in just a few words. And then lockdown hit. And whether it was because Taylor was bored and had more time on her hands, or because of her particular muse at the time being her then boyfriend Joe Alwyn, or because her time out of the public eye got her back down to her roots, we now reach the absolute pinnacle of her songwriting, in my opinion, Folklore and Evermore. And I would have to make an entirely separate video in order to do the complexity of these albums justice. These two albums saw that particular brand of whimsy and wonder from her earlier albums combined with the new wisdom that she had gained from her life experience as an adult. The albums were raw, grounded, intricately woven with vivid storylines that were, according to Taylor, equal parts fact and fiction. As a listener, I truly felt whisked away to somewhere magical when I listened, and as I grow older, I still find myself relating to new hidden gems in these albums. The lyrics are packed with so much that they are still revealing their meaning even 6 years after their release. When I think about the secret ingredient on these albums, I can't help but think that there was probably an element of care that was swept away after all the scrutiny that Taylor Swift had been through at this point. The public and the media had largely proven themselves to be fickle, loving her one moment, hating her the next, and then loving her eventually again. She was in the pit of lockdown with just her boyfriend Joe, so the background noise must have truly disappeared for Taylor. What was left, I imagine, was raw, creative writing that was completely free to flow and flourish, made all the more passionate through the intense feelings of lockdown and what I imagine would have been stillness and silence, in which Taylor could finally process everything that had happened to her. To me, this is her most relatable music. It doesn't just tackle love stories, it tackles life and what it means to be human. Please know that you could pick almost any song from these albums and find lyrical gems to mine, but here are just a few of my favorites. One of her greatest singles from this album is Cardigan. It is that nostalgic whisper of memory that you have for a young, lost love, and it touches on so many nuanced aspects of this. There is a certain boldness to a young love that makes it feel at the time like the truest, most real thing in the world. But you can only understand how true and how real it was in hindsight. At the time when it's happening, you can't fully appreciate it because you have such little life experience. The only inkling of how real it was is in the breakup, where it feels like a soul-shattering wrong has occurred. People tell you you'll find someone else, but that seems to jar with what your heart is telling you, which is that nothing can possibly be as real as the love that you feel for that person. Taylor Swift addresses this in a repetition of the line, "When you are young, they assume you know nothing, but I knew you." She's pointing out the irony that even though the world tells you that you know nothing when you're young, if you've loved truly, you have actually experienced the most real and honest thing in this world. And that is ironically something that gets harder to know the older and more wounded you get. When you love young, you know unfiltered truth. You probably know more than someone who has never loved. She's basically saying, they thought I knew nothing, but I actually knew the realest thing because I loved you. She sings, I knew you'd linger like a tattoo kiss. I knew you'd haunt all of my what ifs. The smell of smoke would hang around this long because I knew everything when I was young. I knew I'd curse you for the longest time, chasing shadows in the grocery line. I knew you'd miss me once the thrill expired and you'd be standing in my front porch light. I knew you'd come back to me. This song is an ode to that deep knowing that you feel when you believe you've found your person, when you believe you've met your soulmate and it doesn't work out. There is what feels like a soul tie that cannot be broken. There is a lingering what if, and there is the remaining love that holds on even if you haven't spoken to the person in years. And those who claim kids know nothing are wrong, she's saying, because our brazen, bold young love is actually everything and the most truest thing. It's an incredibly well-written song which, through its lyrics, instrumentalism and melody, truly carry the listener upon a wave of longing and nostalgia. Once again, Taylor Swift's ability to capture the essence of nuanced human experiences is back. Another favourite track of mine is August. In my opinion, it is one of her most successful tracks at creating a cohesive story lyrically, musically and sonically. The story is about a young, fleeting romance that was no less real or powerful just because it was a fling. Swift captures the whimsical, hopeful nature of young love that we saw in her earlier discography, but this time through the added layer of nostalgia and hindsight, bringing a mature acceptance of both the tragic nature of short-lived love and the fact that it is all the more beautiful because it was fleeting. She sings, "Salt air and the rust on your door, I never needed anything more." How wonderful it is to be young and in love, believing that young love is all that you need before all of the wounds that lead to the necessary screening processes that you adopt when you date after pain, before the mining for red flags, before settling, before losing hope. In August, Taylor Swift does what she does best, musings on the transformational power of free, fearless love, unsullied by pain. In the true climax of the song that makes you want to belt it from the rooftops, she sings, "Back when we were still changing for the better, wanting was enough. For me, it was enough to live for the hope of it all, cancel plans just in case you'd call and say, meet me behind the mall." To be able to access that feeling at 31 years of age when you've long passed it is a gift. Taylor takes us back to the untethered youth that we lived through her in her Red and 1989 albums. But this time she adds a poignant truth that outgrowing this youth is inevitable and that once it's gone, you can't get it back. We can't get back the time when wanting was enough, when we were so unbound that we could still live for the hope of it all, for those endless possibilities that I mentioned time and time again in her earlier discography. Back when we were still changing for the better. After a certain point, changing for the better becomes harder and it becomes more tempting to change for the worse. Swift continues her self-awareness, acknowledging that perhaps she has indeed changed for the worse throughout all of her years of heartache and pain. But still, how beautiful to be able to relive those days of unapologetic whimsy and romantic hope in the future. And thanks to her song August, we now have a vessel through which we can do the same. I think that just by exploring these two tracks, I have proven my point that these albums were artfully and skillfully crafted and that they marked a return to Taylor Swift's songwriting excellence, which was defined by her raw and diaristic confessionals mixed with the optimism and fearlessness of a romantic heart. This time, however, her signature themes and tone were elevated by the hindsight that, because of her life experience, she was able to bring to these albums. What was in the past an excitement and hope for magical love stories has now become a settling in the knowledge of knowing that love stories end and nothing lasts forever. You know, the greatest films of all time were never made, she sings in The One. You know, the greatest loves of all time are over now. But it's worth mentioning that in addition to this, Taylor also succeeds in weaving together fictional storylines inspired by pieces of film or literature that moved her heart to create. Some particularly effective world building, in my opinion, happens in The Last Great American Dynasty, Betty, Invisible String, Ivy, 'Tis the Damn Season, and I think I'll just go on naming songs if I don't stop myself, so moving on. With all this said, however, I do want to say that despite the joy, whimsy and top-notch songwriting that Folklore and Evermore present, there is once again a darker layer to Taylor's work that is starting to peep its head out at this point. It is only subtle here, but it will go on to announce itself more boldly in future albums. One theme that Taylor alludes to quite a bit in her songwriting is infidelity. There are multiple times throughout her discography that she alludes to being unfaithful to a romantic partner, whether it be through thinking about other men or meeting other men. She's vague enough that she can have plausible deniability here, often framing it in a way that could be interpreted as a fictional story, not an autobiographical tale. And I understand that some things are very nuanced, but still, I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more shame or condemnation around this behaviour. If you want to know what I'm talking about, look up the songs Gorgeous, Illicit Affairs, High Infidelity and Guilty as Sin, though we're going to go into Guilty as Sin in a lot more detail later in this video. Now, I understand that Taylor is presenting a messy, emotionally nuanced life of love and heartbreak, but she is ultimately influencing multiple generations of young women, and so the messages in her lyrics hold weight. This begs the question, how responsible is she for leading a good example to her younger audiences and to all of her audiences? Which seems the perfect segue into Midnights, her 10th studio album. Midnights is packed with well-written, catchy songs. Antihero is an interesting look into Taylor's own insecurities. Question tackles the unresolved longing of a relationship that is long over. Maroon is a mature, grown-up evolution of the song Red from her 4th album. Snow on the Beach paints lovely imagery of two people falling in love at the same time. Midnight Rain sings of a relationship forced to end because of bad timing. Sweet Nothing is an ode to the sweet nothings we whisper in a sweet, comfortable relationship. And You're on Your Own Kid is a sophisticated commentary and confessional about the road that led Taylor Swift to her success. Each of these songs embodies a very real and very beautiful human experience, peppered with juicy lyrics and insights. But I'm not going to dive into those right now, as I think I've given ample evidence of Taylor Swift's good writing. Instead, I'd like to focus on the murkier layer of this album. Since the dawn of Taylor Swift's music, she has been known for her optimistic and hopeful takes on love and life, as I've said multiple times in this video. She's put her heart into our hands as an example to relate to. And in her earlier albums, she did this with true vulnerability. It was her determination to fight for love, to fight for the good in life, that kept us skipping along into the sunset with her. I've detailed in this video the powerful effects that her lyrics have had on me and so many other young women, specifically as a solid example of how, despite the hardships and hurts that others cause you, it is always a good idea to love fearlessly, freely, and honestly, as if you've nothing to lose. She's also advocated, as I mentioned, for taking accountability, saying sorry, and forgiving. And whilst we extended grace to her for the messy pictures that she painted and the dark emotions that she felt in her Reputation era, that era is over now. And at the point of Midnights, Taylor Swift is back on top of the world in many ways. Yet, the themes of secrecy, manipulation, and sworn grudges follow her into this album to the extent that it is impossible to ignore. And whereas before such themes were on the back of immense feelings of pain and betrayal after her cancellation at 26 years old, now they are seemingly ruminated on by a woman of 32 years of age. Now, I have to give a nod to the other traumatic incident that Taylor went through, which was assumedly the reason for most of the negativity that she brought onto this album, which was her label, Big Machine Records, selling her masters to Scooter Braun. This happened about 3 years prior to Midnight's release, and Taylor has been extremely vocal about how much this hurt her. Now, I fully support Taylor Swift using her artistic outlet to process the messy emotions that she might have felt as a result of this: anger, betrayal, fear, pettiness, jealousy, apathy, and I'm sure there are so many songs that she wrote about this that we will never hear. At the same time, Taylor still has the power and autonomy to choose which songs are escalated to the studio, the editing floor, executives, producers, and ultimately which songs are released to the public and which songs go onto each album. I'm sure she is fully aware of how teens and adults alike hang on every word of hers, with some even treating her lyrics like a moral code by which to live. I would argue that she has therefore a responsibility, knowing that she is influencing young women and people everywhere, to put care into her music and lyrics and to spread good messages, especially given that A, she has proven capable of doing this before, and B, that throughout her entire discography she has in a way professed to be the arbiter of what good behavior is and isn't. She has acted as a moral judge before, so surely if she is holding others to the standard of good behavior, behavior. She should be holding herself to those same standards. And yet, we have numerous songs on Midnights and in her music thereafter that advocate for vice, secrecy, and deceptive behavior. Karma and vigilante are the most obvious ones, in which she respectively revels in the knowledge that someone is going to get their due suffering and, albeit in a roundabout way, advocates for the deliberate seeking of vengeance. And true to form, she does this through a cute extended metaphor. Karma is the breeze in my hair on the weekend. Karma's a relaxing thought. Aren't you envious that for you it's not? Sweet like honey, Karma is a cat, purring in my lap because it loves me. Flexing like an acrobat, me and Karma vibe like that. But maybe you might say, Taylor Swift is simply raising awareness about a principle that exists in the universe, warning her audience to be aware that what goes around comes around. And to that I say, let's not pretend that this song isn't directed at a very specific person. You're talking for the hell of it, addicted to betrayal but you're relevant. You're terrified to look down, because if you dare, you'll see the glare of everyone you burned just to get there. It's coming back around. And I keep my side of the street clean. You wouldn't know what I mean. And in verse 2, she sings, Spider boy, king of thieves, weave your little webs of opacity. My pennies made your crown. Trick me once, trick me twice. Don't you know that cash ain't the only price? It's coming back around. I think that looking at these lyrics from any angle will very clearly reveal that this song is directed at a very specific person who hurt her. The essence of the song isn't be good people, because karma exists as a fair principle to ensure that we are loving each other right. The essence is, look at this guy who thought he could beat me, oh how wrong he was, and now I'm thriving and relishing in his descent while he suffers. She seems to be taking glee in the misfortune of someone else, and she expresses this in a way that appears to conveniently absolve her from all of her crimes. In fact, she claims that she keeps her side of the street clean, yet if we look elsewhere in her discography, just to prove that there is maybe a lack of integrity here, particularly in the lyrics to her song Cancelled from her last and most recent album, The Life of a Showgirl, she overtly sings, but if you can't be good, then just be better at it. Everyone's got bodies in the attic, or took somebody's man. We'll take you by the hand, and soon you'll learn the art of never getting caught. So which is it, Taylor? Do you really have a clean side of the street, or are you just really good at hiding your crimes? And surely hidden crimes are also subject to the influences of karma, no? So why do you get to hide your bodies in the attic while simultaneously destroying the life of a man who also had bodies in his attic, even though you claim that everyone does? Surely you'll be getting karma for that if you really believe in it. Or is karma just another marketing tactic? It seems to me that as opposed to karma being a genuine force that the universe invokes on humans to make sure that people are getting what's coming for them, Taylor Swift was in fact the one who brought the hammer down on Scott Borchette's head, assuming for a moment that this song is about him. She instigated this so-called karma. So maybe karma is not in fact a universal principle, but rather something that someone powerful can choose to set in motion based on any perceived wrong that is committed against them. And it's clearly not fair, otherwise the corrupt higher-ups would all be humbled and the world would be a fairer place. So it seems that karma might have just in fact been a marketing tactic, with little to no regard for the message that it spreads, that being relish in your enemy's downfalls. This is further promoted in Vigilante, where the repeated hook of the song is, lately I've been dressing for revenge. She also repeats, don't get sad, get even. Is this the kind of message that we want the young teens of the world to grow up believing? Or do we want rather to teach them forgiveness of self and others, resilience and positive thinking? Positive thinking has been proven in study after study to improve quality of life, whereas negative thinking, such as wishing bad on people, holding onto grudges, stewing on your own problems and hoping for karma, have been proven to do the opposite. And I'll list some sources for such studies in the description of this video. So why is Taylor Swift encouraging her fans to think like this? I hate to suggest it, but maybe it's just because this narrative sells. The vindication arc of an innocent victim against the higher-up millionaires is a story that we all want to root for, the underdog. And Taylor Swift has been the underdog for most of her life. It was the narrative that she first sold to us, the dorky girl who never gets noticed by the popular guy. But it's real convenient that she seems to occasionally forget that she too is now a billionaire and absolutely not the underdog anymore. So really, we're watching millionaires fight each other and use us middle to lower class class citizens who are in financial strife as the pawns in their giant game of chess. Or at least that's what it seems like. Don't get me wrong, fighting for justice over an objective wrongdoing is a morally upright thing to do. But overtly choosing to elongate the hate that Scooter Braun and Scott Borchetta have received and continue to receive with no regard for their families or their mental health is not something that a good person does. Hold them accountable, absolutely, but then move on so that they have the best chance to learn and grow from it, rather than floods of death threats in their inboxes over multiple years, sending them spiraling into what has probably been a dark pit of repetitively asking themselves, what's the point of even trying to change if I'm branded by this forever? We ought to correct wrongs so that people can change and flourish with their freedom to choose the good. We ought not to suppress them and brand them with their mistakes. And I'm not absolving Scooter Braun or Scott Borchetta for their crimes. I don't know a thing about them or the likelihood that they would change even if they were given the chance. They probably have been given the chance multiple times. I am merely pointing out the incongruent messaging in Taylor's lyrics. All within her lyrics, she advocates for karma while actively, according to her, hiding bodies in the attic, and additionally ignoring her role in the downfall of Scooter Braun, Scott Borchetta, and probably others. And we're going to get into that more later, so before you come at me in the comments, please watch the rest of this video. Taylor holds the men in her life to certain standards of love and claims to be the underdog, the victim of wrongdoing by these same men, whilst also using her worldwide booming billionaire influence to actively advocate for revenge, effectively silencing these men and their voices. It would appear that in her recent work, though it is fascinating, catchy, and good a lot of the time, we don't see a lot of moral integrity in the lyrics of Taylor Swift. And because she's such a marketing genius and talented songwriter, she pokes fun at these tendencies of hers in songs like Anti-Hero, so that we can say, well, at least she's acknowledging her tendencies, as if that somehow absolves her from them. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem, it's me. At tea time, everybody agrees. I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. It must be exhausting, always rooting for the anti-hero. It's laughable how fitting these lyrics are to this discourse. She's flipping the narrative once again to posit herself as the victim of her own all-consuming, self-deprecating thoughts so that we might have empathy for her. Oh, Taylor, don't worry, we all think these things about ourselves. You're just like us. It's very clever, and it serves the purpose of addressing the conversation of her vices without actually diving into them in any meaningful way or professing to change them. She does it again in Mastermind on this album Midnights, where she essentially admits to being a master manipulator, but shrugs it off in a lol, oops kind of way by singing, and I swear I'm only cryptic and Machiavellian because I care. I know she's likely being tongue-in-cheek here, but that doesn't change the fact that it reads like emotional abuse. What is she actually saying? Is she trying to poke fun at our claiming that we know her by presenting this hyperbolized image of this grand manipulator to show us how silly we look? Or is she saying that our criticisms of her scheming are invalid? It seems to me that she's doing both. She's acknowledging that she has these tendencies, but she's also making excuses for them. She sings, you see, all the wisest women had to do it this way because we were born to be a pawn in every lover's game. And then later she sings, no one wanted to play with me as a little kid, so I've been scheming like a criminal ever since to make them love me and make it seem effortless. This is the first time I have felt the need to confess. So her apparent reasoning for playing mind games with the subject of this song is that all the wisest women had to do it this way and no one wanted to play with me as a little kid. And so many of us would listen to these lyrics and feel empathy for Taylor, claiming that she was fighting in a broken system or that she had no choice. But any mature adult will tell you that after a certain age, it doesn't matter how people have hurt you in the past if you then use that hurt as a reason to hurt others. Being bullied as a child or being the woman in a relationship does not excuse poor or dishonest behavior. And she's clever because she's presented this insight in a way that makes it look like she's confessing to her crimes, but she's actually not taking accountability for them at all. She's justifying them in a way, in fact. And even more cleverly, she's framed all of this through the lens of a romantic relationship. In Mastermind specifically, she said once again, all's fair in love and war, right? But actually, if you read between the lines, words, you could argue that she's not talking to a romantic partner, she's talking to us. She's explaining why she's had to spend her entire career rebranding her image, reshaping her messaging, redefining herself. She's acknowledging that she's been inauthentic with us over the years, but she's also trying to tell us that she had no choice, because as a woman in pop, she had to constantly rebrand herself and stash bodies in the attic in order to stay afloat. This actually makes a lot of sense and is, to a degree, understandable. But just to perspective shift, does any of that really matter through the lens of morality? For every person who chose to sell out, there was a person who turned away from the promise of fame if it came at the expense of their integrity. She didn't have to do any of that. She was just unwilling to give up the success and fame that she would get if she agreed to do it, which is fair enough. We all have free will, but it certainly doesn't give her a free pass to avoid criticism for the very choices that she made in order to hold on to that success and fame. She's an excellent songwriter who has enough talent to survive without the pettiness, without the sour messaging. She's proven that in her earlier discography and in Folklore and Evermore. So why does she insist on using her influence to spread these unhealthy messages? And if I haven't yet proven to you that she does in fact do this, then thankfully we still have 2 more albums to look at. True to form, the succinct album of Midnights was followed by a long, beautifully messy album, The Tortured Poets Department. Riddled with self-professed poetry and philosophical musings about love and heartbreak, Taylor wrote this album after her brief relationship with the 1975 singer Matty Healy in 2023. But what floored the public was the revelation that this relationship had not in fact been brief at all, but rather a slow-burning, on-again, off-again, what-if relationship that Taylor had kept alight in her mind and heart for almost a decade. It turns out that many songs we had loved over the years up until that point had actually been about this man. Taylor even overtly admitted at the Eras tour that Cardigan, a song that until that point fans had believed was entirely fictional, was about Matty Healy. The album, combined with its surprise second installment, The Anthology, is comprised of 31 songs, which many claimed was too many. The Anthology, when analysed from a pop perspective, was particularly muted in its tone, containing mostly heartbreak ballads. I remember feeling Taylor Swift fatigue on the night that these albums came out, one after the other. By the time I had gotten to track 20, the songs were starting to blur together, so I don't even remember my experience of listening to most of them for the first time. I probably would have spaced out the listen over multiple days had I not felt pressure to engage in the Taylor Swift discourse ASAP, and especially to avoid spoilers, which were everywhere on the internet at the time, which is a testament to both how much a new Taylor Swift album floods the zone when it first comes out, and the compelling desire to listen to it quickly lest you be left out. Truly, the album was almost entirely focused on heartbreak and was an attempt to make sense of lost love that Taylor had believed would stand the test of time. She had clearly been deeply hurt, which resulted in some of her most emotionally heavy songwriting. In my opinion, The Tortured Poets Department and Red are the albums that symbolize Taylor's biggest heartbreaks to date. They are equally deep, moving, and profound in the life lessons that they discuss. The entire feeling of The Tortured Poets Department is melancholic, regretful, and almost despairing. Taylor writes some incredibly honest tracks about the effect that her 100th heartbreak has had on her, exaggeration there. And when listening to it, I was almost sad that I was happily married, because I could no longer relate to her, and I deeply wanted to sink with her into that pit of tragedy and catharsis that comes when feeling pain through art. Like I used to be able to do, but I just couldn't because I was so happy and in love. So the album didn't exactly hit with me at the time, but I can still acknowledge some of the beautiful writing on it, especially because although I may not have been able to relate to it at the time it came out, I have since come to relate to it deeply after the trauma of my permanent birth injury, as I had a lot to mourn and grieve after that. In my opinion, particularly poignant and powerful moments can be found on Love of My Life, The Tortured Poets Department title track, Down Bad, So Long London, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, Clara Bow, I Hate It Here, The Prophecy, Peter, But Daddy I Love Him, How Did It End, and The Manuscript. I wish I could go into analyses of these tracks right now, but in the interest of time, I can't. What I will say is that through this raw songwriting, which Taylor communicated nuanced truths about the nature of love, it was clear to all of us that she was back. As a listener, you couldn't help but feel for Taylor. For a moment, her huge celebrity fell by the wayside and we were listening to that young teenage girl we'd all loved, who had dreamed of true love her entire life. Here she was again, having her heart trodden on by a man who had promised her the world but couldn't deliver, allegedly. It's a tale as old as time, and it worked because in this album, Taylor Swift was doing what she does best: honest, diaristic confessionals that tell tales of the human experience. She wasn't playing games, she was screaming out to us from a place of hurt. And despite all of her wealth and success, we, her audience, could still find a way to reach through the rubble and hold her as she held us. This album broke down the walls between us and her. It was a testament to her talent and proof that she doesn't need the flashy lights. She just needs her brain, her heart, and her guitar. Through those things, she can create magic. Now, I really hesitate to criticize the work of a woman in grief, but as she is the most influential pop star in the world, I'm afraid I have to once again touch on where I feel she misused her power and influence on this album. There are two main gripes that I have with the Tortured Poets department. The first is, once again, Taylor's overt reference and arguably endorsement of infidelity. This is lightly sprinkled elsewhere, but it is most obviously found in the song Guilty as Sin. The entire song seems to be an ode to the experience of giving in to the temptation to think about and entertain fantasies of another man when you are in a committed relationship. It's hard to argue that this song's lyrics are anything but a justification for "my relationship is boring, so I am allowed to think about another man." She begins the song by singing, "My boredom's bone deep, this cage was once just fine, am I allowed to cry?" Okay, Taylor, so you're bored. That's fair enough. Sometimes a stable relationship can feel boring, but also you've clearly been unhappy for a long time, so maybe it's time to start thinking about whether or not this relationship is healthy for you to stay in. Nope, it's time to start thinking about another man, sings Taylor. What if he's written mine on my upper thigh only in my mind? I keep recalling things we never did without ever touching his skin. How can I be guilty as sin? This is, in one sense, a very nuanced topic, and in another sense, it is very black and white. I am certain that since the dawn of time, people have experienced temptation in this area when they are in committed relationships. It's a very human thing, and when you are unhappy in a relationship, that temptation, I'm sure, becomes all the greater. So, in this sense, Taylor is addressing a very human experience. But on the other hand, where virtue and good character comes in is in the discipline to choose with your free will not to entertain those thoughts either at all or at the very least until after your current relationship has ended. We all have the power and responsibility to stay committed to our chosen partner if we are in an exclusive relationship with them. And in my opinion, where Taylor misguides her audience here is in the very overt entertainment of these fantasies, painted in great detail without condemning them or even claiming fault for entertaining them. She sings, "I keep these longings locked in lowercase inside a vault. Someone told me there's no such thing as bad thoughts, only your actions talk. These fatal fantasies taking all of me, we've already done it in my head." As we've seen before in Taylor's work, there is an all too familiar sense of her shirking responsibility here. Before the lyric, "There's no such thing as bad thoughts, only your actions talk," she deliberately adds, "Someone told me," almost as if to imply that someone else is to blame for this message that she has internalized. Well, yes, of course, we are each in many ways a product of the narratives we were taught when we were young and therefore grew up believing. But you, Taylor, if you're watching this, are a 33-year-old woman at the time of writing this song, and one that has proven to be intelligent, wise, and discerning enough to create a multi-billion-dollar business. And we know you've gone through a lot of relationships that have made you wiser when it comes to love. You may not be responsible for your spontaneous thoughts, but you are responsible for entertaining those thoughts to the extent to which they become immoral fantasies. And I'm sure that Taylor would be the first to argue that her boyfriend entertaining such fantasies about another woman would be emotional cheating. In fact, just to pivot for a moment, in Fresh Out the Slammer, which is another song on the record, she briefly implies that her then boyfriend Joe Alwyn was in fact entertaining such thoughts of another woman in the line, "He was with her in dreams." She sings this before admitting that she had swirled you into all of my poems of Matty Healy. The entirety of Fresh Out the Slammer as a song is in essence, about how excited she is to have left her relationship with Joe so that she can go and pursue a relationship with Matty. Now, pretty baby, I'm running back home to you. Fresh out the slammer, I know who my first call will be to. It is no accident that she writes as if Matty has owned her heart the entire time she was with Joe. But back to guilty as sin, we see that Taylor doubles down on her justification of what seems to be clear emotional cheating, because apparently she and Matty have a particularly special relationship. She sings, "What if I roll the stone away? They're gonna crucify me anyway. What if the way you hold me is actually what's holy? If long-suffering propriety is what they want from me, they don't know how you've haunted me so stunningly. I choose you and me religiously." This is written, to be clear, by a woman who is actively in a relationship with someone else. "I choose you and me," she writes. Well then, could you maybe end your current relationship? Obviously, she did later, but we don't know the exact timing of that. We do know, though, that she did at least take the steps of obtaining the thoughts, translating the thoughts onto paper, and writing a song about it. If she was going to write a song about this, I would have loved it if she'd approached it with an attitude of, look, yes, I've entertained these thoughts, and I feel guilty about that, because I should feel guilty about that. I shouldn't have done so, and they actually sealed the nail in the coffin of the realization that I should end my current relationship. So I did, or I'm going to. Rather than, these thoughts are justified because my relationship is boring and my bond with Matty is one of a kind. I think it could even be argued that she intentionally framed the idea of emotional cheating through the lens of sin so that she could inadvertently posit it as a breaking free of purity culture or sin shaming, attitudes that are often perpetuated in certain extremist religious groups. And I think that that idea resonates with a large group of her audience, and I'm guessing that she knew that when she wrote this song. Now, I understand that religious allegory is clearly a motif that Taylor wanted to weave throughout the entire album, and it is something that can certainly be powerful, but one does not simply get to disregard certain moral principles because one can associate them with Christianity, in this case emotional cheating being branded as sin. Remove the word sin and the moral principle still applies. It's bad to cheat on your partner, and entertaining fantasies of another man in your head is doing just that. It's not honest, it's not going to make you feel good, and it's probably going to introduce problems to your relationship that might not have been there if you hadn't spent hours thinking of another person. She unknowingly confirms this in the lyrics, "If it's make-believe, why does it feel like a vow we'll both uphold somehow?" Here's the truth about life. The more you think about something, the more real it is going to become in your head. The more you entertain such thoughts, the more you're going to start believing that they could happen and that the grass is greener on the other side. It's one thing to dream, it's another to entertain immoral fantasies that could hurt people. So to Taylor and others who relate to Taylor in this song, if you'd like to entertain thoughts of other people, please end your current relationship. And if you can't keep these fantasies at bay, then maybe reconsider whether a committed relationship is something that you're even ready for in the first place. And it's fine if you're not, it's your journey and it's complex. But to Taylor I say, because again, I know she's watching, at the very least, keep these musings to yourself, lest you provide reason and justification for your audience to entertain such thoughts themselves. So that's the first gripe that I have. The second gripe that I have with the writing on this album is Taylor's casual and unempathetic references to Matty Healy's drug addiction. I'm going to say this plainly, someone's drug addiction is not fair game for anyone to speculate about, let alone overtly mock in front of the entire world. Here are some examples in Taylor's writing. In Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus, Taylor writes, "You needed me, but you needed drugs more." In The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, she writes, "You tried to buy some pills from a friend of friends of mine. They just ghosted you. Now you know what it feels like." I am certain that whatever dependency Matty Healy may have had on drugs in their relationship hurt Taylor. Addiction does that in relationships. At the same time, drug addiction is a very complex illness that is very tragic and very, very serious. To throw this information out to the world, especially as biased as it is, for all the unpredictable reactions of fans and media to feast on, was in my opinion incredibly irresponsible of Taylor. Matty's addiction may have hurt her, but that doesn't justify her using it as a seemingly cheap shot to take him down. We are talking about life and death here. Drug addiction kills average people, let alone men who have millions of Swifties sending them hate mail and death threats. This was, in my opinion, a low blow from Taylor, and it's not as if it was just some spontaneous lyrics she improvised in a live performance, which would be one thing. It was a lyric that made it through the first draft and through several drafts after that. At moments like this, it does almost feel like Taylor is weaponizing her fans against men who have wronged her. Adding a disclaimer upon its release that she's moved on from the grudges she expressed in the Tortured Poets department is not enough to guarantee that Matty Healy wasn't going to get hate from this. And you might say, well, she wanted to be authentic. Well, why is that suddenly a higher good than someone else's well-being? Someone who is suffering from drug addiction, especially when she has proved in pretty much all of her previous albums that authenticity is clearly not the highest of her priorities when it comes to writing songs. You needed me, but you needed drugs more. Yes. That is addiction, Taylor. You've explained the story of every person with an addiction. It's tragic and horrible, but no one is above getting addicted to things. You may have just been privileged enough not to. I'm not lessening one's culpability for getting into drugs in the first place, but Matty Healy is a known drug addict who has been very open about his struggles, and in Taylor's drive-by shots at Matty Healy's drug addiction, she proves that she does not understand it, and therefore she has no right to be commenting on it, regardless of how much he hurt her. And you might say, Kristen, she was hurt by him. Let her feel. And to that I say, just imagine for a second if Taylor truly did understand drug addiction and the tragic hold that it has on someone, the utter dependency, the sapping of the person's free will that happens as a result. I like to think that there's a version of the Tortured Poets department that might have addressed both the heart-wrenching effects of being betrayed, whilst also painting a nuanced picture of the devastation that drug addiction inflicts on the individual who suffers from it and all those around them. Imagine an album where Taylor reflects on the sadness she felt for Matty, watching him turn to pills despite his better judgment, the self-loathing that he perhaps felt for himself, and how she watched it sap away all of the beautiful things that she loved about him, where she referred to the addiction as the monster, not Matty as the monster. I'm not saying, by the way, that he is not guilty of the crime of hurting her, especially in other ways. I'm just saying that drug addiction is a very separate issue from that, and Taylor has conflated the two rather than holding them separately, as I believe she should be. At this point, we've seen Taylor's tendency to be a little bit petty numerous times in her discography. It all started with Better Than Revenge. Actually, we saw it a little bit in debut as well in the original version of Picture to Burn, and it's found its way now into the Tortured Poets department, where she's even now, as a 33-year-old woman, almost certainly titled the aforementioned track The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, deliberately like that, so that it could have that double meaning, taking an extra shot at something that is completely out of Matty Healy's control. And just so that we're clear about that, she also threw in the lyric, "You didn't measure up in any measure of a man." Really, Taylor? Was that necessary? What's interesting is that in Taylor's re-recording of Better Than Revenge, which was released in 2023, she deliberately changed the lyrics "She's better known for the things that she does on the mattress" to "He was a moth to the flame, she was holding the matches," seemingly to erase the appearance that she was slut-shaming the woman in question. So why have we decided that we're not allowed to slut-shame a woman, but we are allowed to comment on a man's drug addiction? And even further, the size of a body part over which he has no control. To be clear, I am not arguing that we should do either of those things. I'm arguing that we should do none of those things. But for Taylor, I'm sure there's a reason. To me, the reason seems to be pettiness. And it further proves my earlier point about the lack of moral integrity in Taylor's lyrics. She publicly appeared to take the moral high ground by changing the lyrics to Better Than Revenge, but then a year later released an album taking sneaky shots at very low targets. And we're about to see the snowball effect of such behavior when it is left unchecked. Enter the life of a showgirl. We have now reached Taylor's most recent album, released just 1 year ago on October 3rd, 2025. So it is safe to say that this work is the greatest clue that we have as to who Taylor Swift is as an artist and arguably as a person right now, today. What she values, her internal thoughts, how she behaves, and her relationship to her audience and her music. But before we get into Taylor Swift's final album and reach the conclusion of this video, I just want to encourage you, if you've enjoyed this video so far, to please like it and subscribe to the channel. This channel is only new, so every like, comment and subscription helps. And I'm really interested in creating more content like this, maybe not as long as this. This was a mammoth of a video to create, but I really am interested in diving deep into moral commentary on complex issues, especially to do with pop culture or modern societal issues. So please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing more, and thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what you think about it in the comments. Off the back of the Tortured Poets department, which was largely panned for having too many ballads, this release brought us another succinct pop album, full of catchy tunes and beats. There are almost no skips on this album, truly, if we're judging the music based on how catchy it is. There are varieties in mood, tempo, genres, and there are some truly unexpected moments of brilliance. The standout to me is Ruin the Friendship, which is hands down my favorite song on the album. It has the heart and wistfulness of a young Taylor Swift, with one of the most brutal bait and switch moments in her entire discography, in my opinion, and even other artists' discography for that matter. The song asks the question, what could have been of a young high school romance that ended too soon and can never be recovered? Taylor contemplates honest questions and reflects on very real regrets that she has clearly been pondering since the incident in question, which was over 10 years ago. This raw, heartbreaking tale is proof of Taylor's heart and allows us to catch a brief glimpse of the young, curly-haired teenager that we first loved and related to. It is a tragic but stunning moment in an album that, for the most part, lacks vulnerability, in my opinion. If you haven't listened to Ruin the Friendship, it's worth a listen. I deliberately tried not to spoil it here for you. Another real moment on the album for me is Eldest Daughter, which is a fitting reflection on Taylor's entire love story, conveniently packaged neatly for this video. She indirectly recalls the innocent, naive fearlessness with which she loved when she was young by first explaining how she lost it. She sings, "Pretty soon I learned cautious discretion when your first crush crushes something kind. When I said I don't believe in marriage, that was a lie." Ignoring the obvious fact that anyone who knows anything about Taylor Swift has known all along that she definitely does believe in marriage, this verse serves as an explanation for so much. When your first crush crushes something kind, is this not in a way an explanation for everything that we've looked at in this video? She is fundamentally a girl who was once hurt by a boy that very first time, and so she put up walls and she told lies, but ultimately she just wants to be loved like all of us do. And then the magical swell of the bridge serves as the climax to Taylor's love story. She sings, "We lie back, a beautiful time lapse, Ferris wheels, kisses and lilacs, and things I said were dumb, because I thought that I'd never find that beautiful life that shimmers that innocent light back, like when we were young." Shimmers that innocent light back is a stunning way to describe the way Taylor Swift loved when she was young and the narrative voice with which she wrote her earlier songs. And I have to say that when I first listened to this song, I felt a moment of shared joy and catharsis between Taylor and I. After having been hurt myself by multiple men, I eventually found my husband, who has helped me to love again in that childlike way that I used to love. Taylor has found that kind of love too in Travis, theoretically. When I listen to these lyrics, I'm happy for her and I relate to her. It's a beautiful vignette of the Taylor Swift that I remember, who I always believed was on the same journey as I was. This is the power of songwriting. But unfortunately, these two songs are really the only glimpse that we get of the Taylor that we remember and relate to, because in the remaining 11 songs, she is anything but relatable, in my opinion. And I have to say, as far as scathing and petty go, this album unfortunately takes the cake. In Father Figure, catchy as it is, we have another song about power wars in which Taylor basks in the fact that she won the game of chess with Scott Borchetta, the founder of Big Machine Records, when she bought her masters back. She truly revels in this perceived victory, but in doing so admits the quiet part out loud, which is that she's essentially more than happy to sabotage people if they hurt her. This is something we already spoke about in the section on Midnights, and we also saw it on Tortured Poets department, but is much more obvious here. She sings, "You want a fight, you found it. I got the place surrounded. You'll be sleeping with the fishes before you know you're drowning. Whose portrait's on the mantle? Who covered up your scandals? Mistake my kindness for weakness and find your card cancelled. I was your father figure. You pulled the wrong trigger. This empire belongs to me." The entire essence of this song is, don't mess with me, you'll regret it. It's a victory dance, but it's also a warning to the rest of the world. And she's not even trying to disguise these sentiments under the pretense of virtue. She's overtly calling herself the devil in the line, "You made a deal with the devil, turns out my dick's bigger." If you're hoping, by the way, that this line and the aforementioned line from Smallest Man Who Ever Lived were the only mentions of this particular part of the male anatomy, then I warn you in advance to take a bathroom break when we get to this timestamp. But back to father figure. Taylor clearly argues that every vice that she embodies in this song and every action that she took to ruin this man are justified by the fact that he hurt her first. So in this way, she is the victim. Yet she seems to have forgotten her privilege in a way because, correct me if I'm wrong, she appears to take complete credit for how successful she has been in her music career. Where is, for instance, the acknowledgement that she could never have won this war if not for her fans? She's happy to take all the credit, but the reality is that she would not have been able to buy her masters back if not for the Eras tour, which made its money from the fans attending the shows. Where was the same credit that she gave to her band and her team in her widely successful song Long Live from the Speak Now album, a beautifully heart-filled song that is a fan favorite, where she thanked her audience and her collaborators for her success, where she called us all a we. Long live the wars we crashed through. Long live all the magic we made. I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you. Alas, for Taylor, it seems that it is no longer a we, it is a me. This empire belongs to me. I understand that she's using hyperbole here to make a dramatic statement, but it still gives the appearance of two giants fighting over who gets to make money from we little people. Furthermore, Taylor continues to spread messages of seeking vengeance and karma without appearing to have considered the fact that most people don't have the privilege or tools to achieve such vindication because, hello, they don't have the money or power that she has. A likely explanation that pops to my mind is that she's past considering the messages that she's endorsing to her audiences and the consequences of such. Rather, she seems to just be interested in telling her versions of stories now, which is her right as an artist, don't get me wrong. The thing is though, once upon a time when Taylor was fighting the very human fights of the struggle to make a name for herself, the struggle of navigating human relationships and the hustle of work, she was very relatable. But I fear that now she has become unrelatable, and worse, she perhaps can't even see that about herself. And if that's the case, she's going to be less likely to approach her position of power with consideration or prudence. In fact, she still seems to be playing the victim in this song. You hurt me first, so I'm justified in hurting you, she appears to say. Is she still trying to tell us that she's the underdog? Not from a money perspective, obviously not, but from a moral perspective. I understand that Taylor Swift is allegedly loyal to a T, hence I protect the family, one of the lyrics from this song, and that it's Scott Borchetta's lack of loyalty that she's criticizing here. But what about her loyalty to her fans? Well, it might even be the case that Taylor doesn't need her fans in the same way that she once did, the way that used to demand her having some kind of relationship with them. And whether artists should even need their fans in the first place is a whole other question, and I'm fully aware that artists do have to plant the narrative that they do need their fans in order to be successful to a certain extent, but the extent to which she played into that narrative was always Taylor's choice, and she really did go above and beyond with it back in the day, liking her fans' posts on Tumblr, holding secret sessions where she invited her fans over to her house as if they were going to be part of some secret that they shared, etc., etc. And maybe as a result of Taylor's distance from her fans, they have become, in her mind, mere buyers for her merch or guaranteed listeners for her music, mere numbers on a chart. Maybe they always were. Maybe she's learned that she can rise and fall 100 times and her fans will always stand by her, so she doesn't have to do all that much at all to stay on top. Maybe she's learned since the Eras tour that she truly is untouchable. And that's just a theory. I can't be sure, and I hope that I'm wrong. But unfortunately, Father Figure is not the only song that suggests this. A song on this album that, in my opinion, particularly speaks to Taylor's privilege is the song Wish List, which I like to call the rich girls version of I'm Not Like the Other Girls. Taylor roasts them, this faceless group of people, for wanting, quote, the yacht life under chopper blades, those bright lights with Balenci shades, a fat ass with a baby face, an Oscar on the bathroom floor, a contract with Real Madrid, etc. Sorry, ma'am, who are you talking about? You can't possibly be talking about we humble citizens in our sardine box apartments who really just want next week's rent, electricity, a meal, just one meal for the day, maybe a night out once a month if we can save up for it. Taylor appears to be arguing that she's not like the other girls because all she wants is, quote, you, meaning Travis. And yet, if you'll please divert your attention to the images on the screen, you'll see Taylor Swift walking the streets in all sorts of brands and expensive clothing. And recently, we know that she did host a wedding at Madison Square Garden for a casual 1,000 people when she could have got married quietly. And before you fight me on that, she has already proved that she can in fact do things quietly when she managed to secretly record this entire album in Sweden without anyone knowing about it. And yes, these things aren't Taylor Swift's lyrics, which is what this video is about, but they are still part of her public image, which is a big part of her brand. And so this image is orchestrated to be consumed with her art. So as a listener, I ideally would like to see integrity between her name, her brand, her image, and her art. So there's a message here that doesn't line up with her image exactly, and it's confusing for her fans. This song is even complete with a lyric that seems to intentionally marginalize her audience. We tell the world to leave us the F alone, and they do, she sings. Does Taylor actually want us to leave her alone? Because she seems to be deliberately including her fans in her life, announcing her proposal online and her wedding in a way that makes her fans feel like she loves them and that they are a part of her life. Or are these marketing stunts too? I'm sure the answer will reveal itself in due course. Ultimately, Wishlist is an example of how out of touch and unrelatable Taylor Swift seems to be as a person at this point. But living a life of riches with the money that she's earned is one thing. Taking the violent swing of the century at a fellow pop star is another. The first time the world heard the song Actually Romantic from The Life of a Showgirl, Swifties everywhere burrowed into their homes, closed their shutters, and refused to leave the house for between 3 to 5 business days. Though I don't necessarily call myself a Swiftie anymore, I was still mortified to hear this song. Never before had I seen Taylor's claws come out like this, let alone towards a fellow pop star who had only, according to what the public knows, very mild transgressions against Taylor Swift, especially compared to some of the other key players we've discussed here today. Maybe there were further transgressions that the public didn't know about, but regardless, releasing this song started a whole lot of negative speculation, gossip, and scandal, and those things are never good. Whether it was because Charli XCX wrote a song about Taylor Swift on her then recent album Brat, or because Charli is notably still friends with Taylor's ex Matty Healy and his then girlfriend, now wife, Gabriette, or because of some other hidden feud we know nothing about. Taylor wrote the most unnecessarily scathing song about Charli in Actually Romantic. The song felt like an absolute punchdown, there's no other way to say it. Charli XCX is a popular enough artist, but on nowhere near as big a scale as Taylor Swift is. Many fans were incredibly confused as to why Taylor would devote an entire track on her new album to dissing Charli, and whether Taylor felt that she was dishing out deserved criticism or perhaps giving a warning to others, we'll never know. All we know is what it looks like, which is that it was done in bad faith and it was just played mean. That's how I feel about it. For context, Charli XCX wrote a song called Sympathy is a Knife for her 2024 album Brat, in which she outlined the insecurities that arose for her when being around such a huge and successful figure as Taylor Swift. In the lyrics to her song, Charli wrote, "I don't want to share this space, I don't want to force a smile. This one girl taps my insecurities, don't know if it's real or if I'm spiraling. Because I couldn't even be her if I tried. Don't want to see her backstage at my boyfriend's show. Fingers crossed behind my back, I hope they break up quick." For context, Charli XCX's boyfriend at the time, now husband, is also a member of the 1975 with Matty Healy. Any person with an ounce of emotional maturity can see that this song was more about Charli than it was about Taylor. It was a very honest song about how being around someone as big as Taylor Swift makes Charli feel small and irrelevant. It's probably how most of us would feel if we were in the same room as Taylor Swift, to be fair. The lyrics to Charli's song are really sad side. They tackle the effects that Charlie's insecurities have had on her psyche, causing her to spiral, and even to go so far as to talk about buying a weapon and self-exiting. In what universe is the appropriate response to such a vulnerable song to write a scathing clapback that goes deliberately out of its way to confirm Charlie's insecurities and make her feel small? Taylor sings, "Hadn't thought of you in a long time, but you keep sending me funny valentines. And I know you think it comes off vicious, but it's precious, adorable. Like a toy chihuahua barking at me from a tiny purse, that's how much it hurts. How many times has your boyfriend said, why are we always talking about her?" Taylor has very clearly missed the entire point of Charlie's song here. She sings, "I heard you call me boring Barbie when the coke's got you brave. High-fived my ex and then you said you're glad he ghosted me. Wrote me a song saying it makes you sick to see my face. Some people might be offended, but it's actually sweet, etc." No, Taylor, most people wouldn't be offended hearing Charlie's song after her clear mental health struggles. The appropriate response is empathy to this woman who is clearly battling hard with her insecurities and intrusive thoughts. The appropriate response from a figure as big as Taylor Swift, and especially coming from the subject of Charlie's song, would have been to, I don't know, send her flowers with a note, or call her up or text her saying, hey, just letting you know that you're doing great, or even just flipping her a text encouraging her in her journey with pop music. Something that lifts up Charlie with a responsible use of the power that Taylor clearly has over Charlie's self-image, not a direct abuse of that power by kicking her when she's down. I don't know Charlie at all. I don't know her character or what she's done to Taylor, but I do know that she is a fellow human being with infinite value who is worthy of dignity at baseline, but certainly after she shared such a vulnerable part of herself in a song. Here we see yet another example, in my opinion, of Taylor seeming not to care what the consequences of her influence are going to be, complete, by the way, with some more drug shaming. I'm 99% sure that Taylor knew that her fans were going to send hate to Charlie after hearing this song, and that she knew that Charlie would feel worse after hearing this song. In my opinion, this song is written tactlessly, in incredibly poor taste, is irresponsible and unfeeling. If Taylor's happy, I'm so glad for her, but if she's really doing so well in her own life, she surely would have no need to punch down such a huge blow on someone who is not really her own size in the music industry. Anyone can see that Taylor Swift was not the primary subject of sympathy as a knife. Anyone except, apparently, Taylor Swift. It's very clear that Taylor misunderstood the song, and to be honest, she completely butchered Charlie's actual message in Sympathy is a Knife when she summed it up as, wrote me a song saying it makes you sick to see my face. The song wasn't about Charlie having a sick reaction to just seeing Taylor's face because of some inherent flaw of Taylor's. It was about one of probably many triggers that activate Charlie's insecurities and send her into a spiral, which is fair given that Taylor Swift is the biggest pop star in the world and Charlie is trying to be a pop star. It seems to me that the chance that anyone's first response to Charlie's song would be offense rather than empathy or understanding is highly unlikely if you're dealing with a person who is emotionally secure. Which, side note, given that Taylor Swift is the product of 20 years of public attention and scrutiny, I would not blame her at all if she wasn't. In fact, through that lens, you can't really blame Taylor if she were to think that something is about her if it isn't. She's been thinking about how the public perceives her since she was a teenager, and she's been dealing with negative tabloid headings and active fame for a decade. So if she hears something that on the surface seems to be about her, I can understand why her nervous system would panic and jump on the defense. But as I mentioned before, this does not justify cruelty and vindictiveness. As a longtime fan of Taylor's, I was super sad to hear this song, and even though I'd spent years relating to Taylor, I realized that I no longer wanted to be like her. In the bridge of Actually Romantic, Taylor sings, I mind my business, God's my witness that I don't provoke it. Once again, Taylor seems to be shirking blame here. The truth is, she is provoking it because she knows that her fan base and influence are much bigger than Charlie's, and she knows the wrath that's going to fall on Charlie's head after Taylor's song is released. But even more puzzling than this is the fact that Taylor is seemingly attacking someone for, when you boil it down, expressing themselves creatively. Taylor has always professed to fight for creative freedom and autonomy for artists, and yet the the moment that Charlie mentions Taylor in one of her songs in a way that is neutral or negative of Taylor, Taylor unleashes this huge attack on Charlie that is ironically likely to silence her. So rather than allowing a fellow artist to express their feelings creatively, she has appeared to punish said artist for doing just that. This is another area where her professed values and her actions do not line up. Does she really care about creative freedom of artists, or does she only support art when it paints her in a good light or doesn't mention her at all? And that's aside from the fact that expressing one's insecurities in a song, the way that Charli XCX has done in Sympathy is a Knife, is something that Taylor has done seemingly in Anti-Hero. She's done it herself. I'm not trying to judge Taylor's character, and I do actually believe in separating the art from the artist to a certain extent, but we are at the point now where Taylor has brought vice into her art, into her lyrics. So I have to ask, if you're an empathetic and a good person, how could you possibly release these kinds of lyrics, especially in this context? That's a genuine question. It seems careless to me. When you're a billionaire, is it morally permissible to use your power to take down someone just because they may have dented your ego? And I'm fully aware that I don't know what's gone on behind the scenes between Taylor and Charli, but Taylor's aware that we're not aware of that, and yet she was happy to release this song, knowing that we would assume it's because of these mild transgressions, because we don't know anything deeper of what she's done to Taylor. So it's a really bad look to Taylor and not a good message that she's spreading to her fans regardless. That you can bully someone who is not as successful or powerful as you simply because they said something that you don't like. But aside from speculations about her motives and the moral status of her actions, what saddens me the most is the example that she's setting for her fans. I've said it time and time again in this video, people look up to Taylor and many are willing to support her decisions come hell or high water. It's hard to read this song as anything but an advocacy for holding grudges, being petty, and women turning against other women. It's her video clip for Bad Blood come to life, and not in a girl power sort of way. Which brings me to another issue that I have with this album. We see numerous examples in the life of a showgirl of Taylor talking down to or just being mean to other women. Specifically, she refers to other women as bitches, seemingly for no reason. In Honey, she sings, "When anyone called me sweetheart, it was passive aggressive at the bar, and the bitch was telling me to back off because her man had looked at me wrong. If anyone called me honey, it was standing in the bathroom, white teeth. They were saying that skirt don't fit me, and I cried the whole way home." In The Life of a Showgirl, the song she sings, "And all the headshots on the walls of the dance hall are the bitches who wish I'd hurry up and die." Whether it was intentional by Taylor or not, in these lyrics we see how Taylor has at least subconsciously come to believe that other women are the enemy. And I get it in some sense. In the pop industry, every other young female artist is her direct competitor, but they are also human beings, and at least in Honey I see no plausible reason as to why the woman at the bar deserved to be called that word. And again, these songs made it through multiple edits, so she said yes to this language through multiple drafts. And I'm sure I need not point out the irony of her suggesting that she was bullied by the women in the bathroom on the very same album where she ruthlessly bullies another woman for the length of an entire song. But I'm not going to dive deeper on what Taylor's songs say about women and femininity, because we'd be here all day, and we already kind of have. Instead, let's move on to another song from Showgirl. At this point, I feel like I'm flogging a horse, but we have to mention the song Cancelled again, because in my opinion it's an equally tone-deaf commentary on modern cancel culture, complete with ample excuses for Taylor's apparent bodies that she has in the attic. She sings, "Did you make a joke only a man could? Were you just too smug for your own good? Or bring a tiny violin to a knife fight? Did you girl boss too close to the sun? Did they catch you having far too much fun?" Here she's listing these as common reasons as to why women these days get cancelled. But that's not the whole truth at all. People are cancelled for various and many times very, very good reasons. SA, fraud, being a predator, to name just a few of the many reasons why big figures have been cancelled. And yet she still has the confidence to sing, "Good thing I like my friends cancelled. I like them cloaked in Gucci and in scandal." But I thought all you wanted was Travis, Taylor, not big flashy brands. Continuity issues with this album aside, this is a dangerous message. She's not being specific about her actual meaning here. I think what she actually means is that she will stick by her friends when they are falsely accused accused of crimes that get them cancelled, as she was. But she doesn't add that nuance, so this song could hypothetically be misconstrued and used to support people who have committed real crimes. After all, if Taylor Swift, the biggest pop star in the world, keeps her cancelled friends, then why can't I? And I'm not saying that people who have been cancelled aren't worthy of forgiveness and that redemption isn't possible, but she doesn't sing about her friends learning from their mistakes. Instead, she offers to help her friends get away with crimes without getting caught. "We'll take you by the hand," she sings, "and soon you'll learn the art of never getting caught." These are not the precepts of a true, good, and honest friendship. A virtuous friendship holds the other to a high moral standard. It fraternally corrects. It elevates the other in their freedom to choose the good. It doesn't run around in dark places, enabling each other's vices and keeping secrets. But oh, how I wish that was the worst it got on this album. Finally, we reach a song that I'm really sad I have to talk about. Wood. I'm not going to get into the lyrics, I have too much respect for you all. All I'll say is that this song overwhelmingly cheapens something that ought to be really sacred and private. And to me, it feels really, really icky because of this. We know that Taylor is capable of painting magical worlds with her lyrics, so we know that she was capable of alluding to this in a more classy and subtle way. She actually has before. But it seems to me that she chose the brash, obvious way that leaves little to the imagination, complete with a few lazy and unnecessary puns, in my opinion. This isn't clever or skillful writing to me, and it makes me wonder what could have possibly compelled her to put such a cheap description of something so intimate and special out to the world in this way. Was this another shot at her exes, or her gloating about how good she has it, or her rebelling against the purity culture in which she was raised, or perhaps an aha moment to all the people who said that she would never find love? I truly don't know the answer. Feel free to speculate or give your opinion in the comments. But on top of this, as a long-term fan of Taylor's music and as a woman part of the exact demographic for whom she has been writing her entire life, this song is a really unsatisfying end to her dating life. She spent years painting us castles with her words, reaching deep into a part of us with her soft but acutely relatable lyrics, and bringing us to tears with lyrics that made us sing them back to her with open hearts. We have been waiting for her love story to reach the point where she finds her one lifelong love, and this is what we get. It feels unfitting, slightly performative, and makes us want to avert our gaze rather than sing along in reckless abandon the way we have in the past. And as for the morale that it provides for young women, I am saddened to think what message young girls are taking away from this song, and we know that they're listening because it is well known that a large demographic of Taylor's audience are kids. So before you let your kids listen to this album, please consider what message they're going to take away from this song. I am well aware that there is a radio-friendly version, but that won't stop kids listening to it when they're 18 or younger, let's be real, at which age a person is still highly influenceable, and messages of sexual ethics are equally, if not more, important at that stage. Ultimately, with all of this considered, The Life of a Showgirl further supports the thesis that I've been arguing in this video, that whereas Taylor Swift's lyrics used to predominantly preach messages of self-acceptance, fearless love, resilience, authenticity, and forgiveness, her latter discography suggests that she is no longer interested in using her influence to promote ideas that are conducive to the flourishing of her audience members. Seeking revenge, holding onto receipts, hiding your crimes, ignoring others' crimes, gloating, and picking on people smaller than you are not things that are going to bring happiness or flourishing to anyone, especially people much less privileged than she is. And that doesn't take away from the fact that she is still producing some really good and beautiful music. Both things can be true at the same time. Thus, in The Life of a Showgirl, what we were hoping would be a celebratory anthem about finding her forever love ended up being a disappointing album that arguably didn't even have coherence in its narrative. The whole album serves as a bait and switch, and I'm not sure if it was intentional or not. She told us that this was going to be an album about what the life of a showgirl was like behind closed doors, but it seems that what we ended up getting was a whole bunch of image management, a general settling of her personal scores, and lots of carefully considered narratives. Ironically, this probably is the accurate life of a showgirl in that perhaps she can't reveal her real self to us, even if she wanted to, because she's got to keep that money coming in. She's got thousands of people on her payroll at this point, so she's got to keep her image interesting. And being real with us would take away from that mystery. Regardless of her rhymes and reasons, it is clear that over her almost 20-year run as a published songwriter, Taylor Swift's relationship with her music has changed, as has her relationship with her fans. Whereas before, her music was the vessel through which she could spread hopeful messages and provide resonance for her audience about real human experiences, now the shape of the once known young Taylor is barely visible amidst the fog of the Taylor Swift brand. The marketing tactics, PR moves, and shifting intentions of the Taylor Swift business have ultimately made us, her fans, lose touch with the things we used to love about her music. And I fear that she too might have lost touch with those things. Perhaps it's this that is the catalyst for the fall in the moral integrity of her lyrics, or perhaps it was all an act from the beginning. Heck, perhaps instead of asking Matty Healy this question, we should be turning to Taylor and asking, was any of it true? For the record, I don't believe that it was fake. Personally, I've had and continue to have way too many real emotional moments when listening to Taylor Swift's music to believe that it was all fake. If I may pose a theory, I think rather that what we've seen in Taylor Swift's adulthood is what happens when a woman who was deeply hurt numerous times, both privately and publicly, is not given the tools or support to navigate those life-altering and identity-shifting wounds at the time of their occurrence. And so those wounds possibly festered and grew, and although she may have tried to squash them, the everyday hustle of her life as a celebrity did not afford her the time to process them properly. But things kept piling up. The pressure to look a certain way, the fear for her life at all times, the immense responsibility she must feel knowing that people have used her name to commit violence, among so many other things. And so maybe a part of her shut off because it was all too much. Maybe it's easier for her to dissociate with elements of her personhood because there are far too many emotional weights to carry. And I can sympathize with that. I don't know how I would handle being such a massive celebrity. I know that I wouldn't handle it well. So I am still rooting for Taylor Swift. I think that there is still a lot of hope that things could turn around. In between, the more rigid albums have been really beautiful moments of humanity from Taylor, as I've outlined in this video, and she's certainly not done writing. I look forward to seeing what her next album brings, and personally, I very much look forward to the day, if it ever happens, where Taylor might write about the transformative love of becoming a mother, if that's on the cards for her. There are so many juicy emotions to mine there, and you can bet that I will be seated for that, because oh, how it would change her and bring to life a whole new catalogue of music and emotions. And overall, despite all the downsides and messy moments, actually largely because of them, Taylor Swift's body of work still paints an incredibly accurate picture of what it is to be human. Throughout her years as a songwriter, she has shown resilience, wisdom beyond her years, and at times an optimism for life that is unparalleled by almost any other artist I know. And she's poured years into crafting meaningful music and lyrics that have moved our emotions and elevated our souls towards goodness and beauty. But with all this having been said, I'm afraid that I cannot give Taylor a free pass for the harmful messages that she's spread in her recent music, the pettiness she's displayed, the vice she's endorsed, and the dwelling on negative emotions that she's encouraged. I really hope that I'm wrong here, but from looking at the evidence, it seems to me that Taylor is at a stage in her life where she is making actively harmful choices in her songwriting, with seemingly no regard for the moral consequences or the people who might suffer for them. I don't know if she's doing it consciously, but she is still responsible for these choices. And unfortunately, the people who are going to suffer the most for it are the fans who have looked up to her like a big sister since they first started listening to her music. The people who have attended her shows devoutly since they first put on a Junior Jules t-shirt. The teenagers who pass bracelets around and draw 13s on their arm. The unfathomably large population of young, influenceable minds who hang on Taylor's words like they are gold, putting their entire trust into whatever she has to say. Those people matter. More than numbers on a chart, more than Grammys, more than any other metric you could use to measure success. And they deserve to have a role model who will guide them along the path toward human flourishing. I truly hope with my entire heart that Taylor Swift will one day resume that role.